Thank you, Clara, for coming today. Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing your Quitting Plastics book and everything else. So welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Clara, and this is my mum, Louise.
Hi.
And we are the co-authors of Quitting Plastic. Before we kick off this webinar, I want to acknowledge that we are Zooming to you from Gadigal country in Sydney, and to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and that sovereignty was never ceded. I'd also like to mention that we are in quite different conditions from you guys down in Melbourne. So we are still allowed to visit each other at the moment. We don't have the same lockdown provisions. So we are really feeling for everyone down in Melbourne. But hopefully this is kind of a fun webinar while you guys are all, in the stage 4 lockdown. So to start off, quitting plastic and kind of kickstarting your plastic-free life. This is a book Mum and I wrote 2 years ago and came out last year. And basically it came from the fact that we as a family had been quitting plastic for 10 years. And we had a lot of friends who kind of were asking us tips, and we had a lot of, accumulated knowledge. We'd had a lot of trial and error, and we thought we should put it all in a book for an easy resource for everybody. And the way it really started was when I was 16. I, like many teenagers, was very strong-willed, and I decided at the time that I really wanted to grow my hair super long, which doesn't sound like the normal entree into quitting plastic, but I got very into natural hair care. So I was washing my hair with bicarb soda and I was conditioning it with vinegar. My family became aware of this quite quickly because I didn't actually realize you were meant to dilute the vinegar. So I kind of emerged from my first au naturel shower smelling like a jar of sauerkraut. And it kind of led to this whole conversation in my family about what I was doing and why I was doing it. It was definitely from a place of vanity, but at the time, when I was reading into all this kind of natural hair care, I found this whole community of people who were doing it because they wanted to quit plastic. And it was something that had never really kind of occurred to me. And yeah.
So from our point of view as parents with a, quite a, what could you say, confident teenager, put it that way, it was a real wake-up call, because we rather fancied ourselves as early adopters of solar panels and water tanks and all of that sort of thing. And I was gaily filling the kids' lunch boxes with single-use plastic. So it was really useful to just start thinking about it. And I guess you go through the first stage is complete horror when you realise how much plastic is out there and how much people don't care and how much people are throwing, into the environment. And then you think, well, I can start doing something about that. And you can do it bit by bit. And, I know it's a cliche, but every bit does matter. So, but we did start pre-keep cups, which made us very embarrassing. We had those camping thermos type cups that we were trying to take the local coffee and get them under the coffee machine. So it's certainly been quite an interesting journey. And as Clara said, people were constantly asking us about it. And finally, a lady I'm in the community garden with just turned around to me and said, Louise, can you guys just put this all down in a book for me? And we went, oh, okay, let's do that. So there you go. So that's the idea. It's meant to be easy. You're meant to be able to see each room in your house and look for a tip. And I guess that the primary objective is to make you feel good about it, not to make you feel overwhelmed and that you can't do this.
Yeah, so I guess just a little bit about the webinar. We will take you through a little bit of the plastic problem, which I'm sure all of you are at least a little bit aware of if you're logging onto this webinar, but just kind of the scale of it and what we're trying to tackle. And then we'll take you through some of kind of our top tips for getting started, and then some of the more tricky things in each room of the house. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So get started. So I guess, how did plastic become such a problem? It's actually only quite recent that we've been in this, prolific plastic world.
So plastic is actually fascinating if you go and do some research into it, which we did. The acceleration of the development of plastics was, of course, in World War II. Wars are great things for accelerating technologies and invention. And things like cling wrap, that was originally sarin wrap, which was a spray-on coating for fighter planes. So after World War II, we'd had this really, rapid development of these fantastic high-performance materials. And suddenly there was this ability to make all these cheap things in plastic that every consumer could buy. And that, ironically, was seen as a sort of environmental benefit at the time because, materials like wood and other, finite natural materials were already under pressure. So we had a whole cultural shift, which was from waste not, want not to waste lots and what more. And one of the funny stories was the very first water coolers with plastic cups. People would actually go and wash them out because we didn't actually understand how to just chuck stuff away. But we had this whole cultural push there. You can see up on the screen that it's this golden age where we had reached this period of sort of modernity where we were actually released from the drudgery of washing up. We could just toss everything away. So there was it's a really recent thing, this idea that stuff is actually disposable. And I hope that's a kind of, I guess, something to help us turn that.
Yeah, because we went from, this is a shift that's actually only happened in basically one generation. So we're kind of hopeful that in the next generation, we can shift back. But to give you an idea of the scope of the problem here, this is an infographic which kind of shows how much plastic waste we have generated. And it's huge, it's enormous. So 34 billion projected metric tons is how much we will have produced by 2050. And we're sitting at about 8.3. It's probably more than that now because that was in 2017. And to give you, I guess, kind of a visual, it's how many elephants, is it?
Okay. Did I not bring my notes of the elephants? Is it on here? Anyway, it's a huge number of elephants. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my elephant graphic. But, and to give you an idea of how easy we think it is to change that, if you think about on the left-hand side, 42 to 50% of plastic items are manufactured today designed to be used only once or for a very short time, which is phenomenal, really. So that's almost half of that giant plastic production is basically designed for us to toss, which, actually is quite ridiculous. And a third of all the plastic waste that we generate leaks into the environment. So 9% globally is recycled, and in Australia it's only 12.8%, which isn't really fantastic. And if you have a look on the left-hand side, you can see where the top 10 sources of waste in the environment are. And they, again, are things that we can really easily do without. Straws, plastic grocery bags, plastic lids, foam, styrofoam takeout containers. So just that infographic, I think, gives you a pretty good idea about if everybody just did a little bit, how easy it would be to really reduce our plastic footprint.
And I guess that infographic gives you an idea of the plastic that we can see in our environment. But what you don't see and what makes up some of that statistic are microplastics, which are basically what happens when that plastic, which is leaked into the environment, starts to break down into smaller and smaller parts. And this is, I guess, kind of more disturbing in a way because it's not a problem that we can see and tackle because they're microscopic basically. And we've discovered microplastics are everywhere. It was actually a academic up here in Sydney who first discovered them and kind of named them as a problem. But since then, and that was only, I think, in 2012, but since then we've discovered basically microplastics are everywhere. They are in our seafood, they are in our drinking water. And interestingly, there's actually way more microplastics in bottled water, which, supposedly comes from these pure water sources than there is in tap water. It's in our beer. And most disturbingly, we are starting to find it in human feces. And it's not clear whether that's as a result of ingesting microplastics or whether we just are so covered in microplastics on our bodies that's happening. But this is, I guess, the reality of plastic leaking into our environment. Even if you can't see it, it is slowly infecting everything. And because it hasn't been around for that long, we're really not sure what the health implications of that are going to be. So there is, I think, quite a strong impetus, because these are, incredibly high performance, durable materials. They shouldn't really be in our bodies, for us to start tackling this problem for our own health and also for the health of the planet. So
I guess this slide's pretty sort of self-explanatory. Plastic in the environment. Where plastic is in the environment depends a lot on where the water currents are. So I'm sure you've probably heard of the Great Pacific Plastic Patch. It's about the same size as Queensland. It's where a whole lot of currents converge. The slide to the bottom right, that's actually a Henderson Island. It's a study site for Australian academics. It's uninhabited. So because of where it sits in the currents, it is absolutely covered in plastic waste. The slide on your left is Bali. That also runs, there's a current running from Java, which is very, very heavily populated and polluted. So they get a lot of pollution, plastic pollution from Java. And on the right-hand side is, of course, the top in the Himalayas, where there's, that's we only have ourselves to blame for that. We've carried it up.
So I guess what these two slides kind of show is, like, even if you can't see in your immediate environment, these plastics all end up somewhere and they are doing a lot of damage. And so this slide is kind of, the new reality that we're in now. You guys are all feeling it much more keenly than we are in Sydney in terms of lockdown and the impacts of the pandemic. But I guess, one side of it is that we have a whole lot more plastic entering our environment, which previously wasn't really, I guess, a waste stream. A lot of kind of the medical waste from protective equipment, masks, gloves and gowns, that wasn't really, kind of entering our waterways before. It was all going to medical waste. But as we all need those to protect ourselves, it is becoming a greater source of plastic waste. So I guess two things we'd say about this, which is, firstly, don't lose hope, I suppose. The Guardian conducted a study that said, actually before the pandemic happened, that plastic avoidance was becoming a very normalized behavior, that, like, kind of as a society, as a community, we were all collectively shifting away, which is really fantastic news. But there is some fear that, kind of during the pandemic, when we need this, high performance material more, particularly in the medical field, that we'll shift back to those bad habits. Well, not bad habits, but those usual habits which we've learned, which are quite detrimental. But the thing is, I guess, is we can learn quickly, which is good. And we would never ever say avoid plastic, which you need to protect yourself and for your health. It's something we talk about in the book with medications, with, kind of the plastics that are used in hospitals. That's really what this material is for. It's high performance, it is durable, it is, it can be imbued with antimicrobial and antibacterial properties, which is incredible. Like, this is definitely the space where we should be using this high performance material. Where we shouldn't be using it is the kind of, the plastic bag that you use for 7 minutes and then you chuck away. We talk a lot in the book about good plastic, bad plastic, because it's not inherently bad by any means. Planes and cars are so much more efficient because we've been able to replace a lot of parts with plastic. Similarly, modern medicine is so much safer because of the leaps and bounds that plastic has allowed. So protect yourself. Don't feel bad about using plastic during a pandemic, if it's, around health reasons, etc. But where you can, if you can avoid those unnecessary plastics, you still can, and it's quite safe to still do that.
Yeah, and I guess if you are using plastic for medical reasons at the moment, just try and make sure it doesn't leak into the environment, because that's where it's doing the most damage. Try and get it disposed of in some proper way. And as Clara said, there are obviously advantages. a Boeing Dreamliner is 50% plastic, so it uses so much less fossil fuels. So it's, you know, there's never a sort of black or white environmental answer, but if you can keep it out of the environment, and I know there's lots of pictures of masks on beaches now, but that's a good thing. If you can.
Yeah, and
There's a
you
really
know what we'll kind of talk. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
There's a really good question that's come up just about face masks and using Ziploc bags to put your face mask in. Do you have any?
I could answer that. Look, my answer to Ziploc bags is there's a factory in South Australia. It's the first Australian factory that makes Ziploc bags out of, it's called BioBag, makes Ziploc bags out of corn starch. So, and they last for quite a long time and then can be hot composted. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But that's, and the other thing is you can get some rubberized fabric. I've got some bags like that, the wet bags, but I got them in New Zealand. So there are things like that, but we can get onto that as we go on, if you like.
And I guess if you're thinking about, using that Ziploc bag to kind of contain any of the germs that are on that particular mask. As we said, there are, I guess, different options to just like the typical Ziploc bag. Could you put it in just a cloth bag? I'm not sure whether that contains the germs.
I'm not sure
as much, but I would say that that's still probably an option, even if it's not as sealed as a plastic bag. And then you can at least put it in, a hot washing machine and kill any germs on it and keep reusing that little pouch for your face mask.
Look, I'm old enough to remember my mother carrying around what was called a wet bag. I was born in the early 60s, and that was a rubberized fabric, which was made from latex and fabric, so natural materials. And she used to just put little cloths in there that were damp to clean up all her kids, because we didn't really have a lot of plastic. So there are options.
All right. So getting started.
We might just send everyone some of that information to Louise.
Yep.
Interested in
Sure.
that. Just before we keep going, I might just put the other poll up.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think that's pretty much everyone. These are the results. So only 1% has no knowledge of recycling, 39% has some knowledge, and 56% has a pretty good understanding of how to recycle. And only 5% are an expert in this space. So thank you for that.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So into our practical tips. So this is, I guess, more kind of about the psychology of getting started, and then we'll get to kind of like the very concrete things you can do. But like with anything, when you're doing something new, it takes a while for a new habit to form. The studies we looked at kind of showed that it's anywhere between 2 weeks and nearly 100 weeks. So there's no concrete science on how long it takes you to really bed in a new habit. Very much depends on you. But these are kind of the tips we feel are there that can help you succeed in going plastic free. So firstly, planning for success. I don't know, it very much depends on your personality. I'm much more of an incremental person. I like to do one thing at a time and slowly build up. My sister, on the other hand, is an absolutist. She will do it all at once, and it doesn't matter how hard it is. That's how she approaches things. So, decide which approach works for you and take that on board. When it comes to quitting plastic, you might just start with taking your keep cup, or you might, just be like my sister and remove every piece of plastic from your home and just go from there. Finding a friend, and I think this is a great thing about this webinar and about the council and the support they're giving you. You guys already have a community of people who are interested in this. You can share tips, you can kind of keep each other accountable along this journey, and that's really great. And similarly, joining an online waste-free community, especially at a time of lockdown when you guys can't actually, see each other and chat, it can be really nice to have people to discuss kind of like the things which are hard, the things that you find are really working for you. And then beyond that, we are in a world where there's a lot more choice in terms of plastic-free than there was when we started 12 years ago now. So vote with your wallet. I know from speaking to Sarah that there are some fantastic local businesses in your community who do kind of, they do beeswax wraps, they do shampoo bars, they do bulk foods that you can get without packaging. So, support those businesses and the things they're doing rather than kind of, if you can, that is, of course, because that really helps them continue to support the plastic-free community. I know that Melbourneites are not really going outside at the moment, but when you're going outside for your walk, if you do see any plastic, do pick it up to stop it leaking into the environment any further. And our final one is eat an ice cream cone. Doesn't have to be an ice cream cone, but any kind of plastic-free treat, the kind of positive reinforcement, because this, it should be ideally fun and enjoyable doing this, and you're much more likely to keep doing it if it is.
And in the book, we've got a bit of information on sort of original food packaging, which were flatbreads and things like that. Before plastic, we used to make food so that it would be contained within something edible, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
So the easiest ways, we sort of looked at, what's the biggest problem? So where's the biggest impact? And looking at the poll, it's not going to be a surprise because you're experienced at trying to do something. So the big four are plastic water bottles, plastic straws, plastic bags, and the coffee cup. So coffee cups at the moment, I don't know, I think your cafes are shut. Increasingly difficult in Sydney even. There is a contactless pour process where you can put your coffee cup down and the barista will just won't touch it, will put it straight in. That may work for you, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure your coffee shops are closed. I think plastic water bottles are really easy to avoid, and it's very easy to remember to do that if you know that if you buy it in a disposable plastic water bottle, it's got twice the microplastics. Straws and bags, I think, too, are very easy, and it's not a problem for lockdown. So if you just start with that,
it makes a huge impact.
It makes a huge impact.
And I have to say, as we said, lockdown, refusing straws is easier unless you obviously need them for medical conditions. It might be different when you go to a bar. I have to say I still feel a bit awkward saying no straw please in my drink. But what I like to think is, well, I'd never drink a beautiful glass of wine with a straw in it. So it's actually a lot more enjoyable to drink without a straw. So you can come at it from that point if you want. So next, this is kind of some more, I guess, diving deeper into the solutions to rein in this kind of throwaway living culture, which has become so prevalent and really, it's really hard to escape because everything in our society is built around it. Even like the kind of normal 3 R's we learned about reduce, reuse, recycle, they suggest a certain amount of trust in the way that we're going to take care of our waste, which isn't actually, unfortunately, that accurate or actually that doable for just the sheer volume of plastic waste that we're creating. So what we kind of did was to reinvent or reimagine the 3 R's into 5. And the first one is refuse. So where you can, say no to those unnecessary ones, those unnecessary single-use plastics, plastic bags, straws, other single-use items, because when we do that, reducing the demand, hopefully we can reduce the supply at the manufacturing end. Reduce, going to less or zero packaging. I understand that's probably really difficult for a lot of you in Melbourne now when you're getting your groceries delivered. You can't go to bulk food stores, and perhaps those small businesses don't have the ability to deliver the way that somewhere like Coles and Woolworths would. But where you can, even in your supermarket shop, you can opt for things which have less packaging, less plastic packaging. You might, pick the parcel that only has the small plastic window compared to being in a big plastic packet, or opt for the flour that comes in a paper bag rather than a plastic bag. Reuse. So I think everyone's probably quite familiar with a lot of the plastic reduction techniques in the reuse space. There's been an amazing kind of cottage industry emerge with plastic-free alternatives. Keep Cup is probably one of the most famous. And we know that now actually huge businesses like Unilever are starting to introduce this concept into their supply stream. So the Loop is something Unilever is doing where they are introducing a lot of their common products like ice cream, toothpaste, with all the brand names that they carry in reusable packaging. They did a pilot program in Paris and New York last year, and they're actually going to start a pilot program in Sydney soon. So we will report back, and it's kind of like the milkman model. You get it in a reusable container and then you return it to Unilever to be used again.
It's picked up at the door, by the way. You don't even have to return it.
Yeah. Replace, I kind of touched on that before with the reduce of packaging. And then recycle, as we kind of said before, it really should be your last option when it comes to plastics, because it is just so low, the number of plastics that are actually recycled. And unfortunately, plastic is one of those materials where when you recycle it, it degrades, whereas glass and metal can be recycled much more effectively for similar quality products. Plastic will continue to degrade.
I'll just say something else on the recycle, that if you're looking at the national waste statistics for Australia, so the last report was done in 2018, there'll be another one done this year, but 12.8% of plastics are recycled. If you look at metals, so anything you buy in a can, that's got a sort of 80 to 90+% capture rate. Metals are perfectly recycled. They don't downcycle. They're easy to recycle, and they're very, very effectively recycled. Glass is about 60% and paper is around 60%. So if you've got cardboard. So that gives you, I guess, an idea of if you in the supermarket, and I saw a question up there about, if I'm going to replace a plastic packaging, do I do metal or glass? If you want to be sure that whatever you use gets recycled, you just look at those statistics. We've got this all in the book as well to help you.
And just as we keep going through some of these tips in the Q&A section, please keep popping your questions in. But also, if you see a question which is interesting for you, can you please vote it up so that we know which ones that people want answered the most, and we can kind of go from the. So this is the kitchen, and in the book we've got we've got this broken down. It's definitely, I'd say, the room where you can make by far the most impact in terms of reducing plastic, because it is where so much of our waste is generated. And because it is something that we do every week, obviously we're bringing a lot of packaging into the house every week. So the first thing would be kind of easy swaps. As I mentioned before, getting your butter in kind of like the paper wrapping rather than the plastic. Getting, flour and sugar, again, in paper rather than plastic. Going naked, I think this is like a big one, even though in Victoria and also in Queen South Wales, supermarkets are getting rid of plastic bags at the actual grocery checkout. They still have a lot of the little produce bags that people kind of, put their fruit and veggies in when they put them into the trolley. I'd really encourage you to go naked. I'm sure most of us, I know I do, all my fruit and mingle in my fruit bowl. So really need them to be correct. And if you want if you're getting kind of like lots of tomatoes or lots of onions and you want to group them together for ease, you can buy mesh kind of net bags, which are great for that. Bringing your own containers is a great one, particularly if you're someone who eats meat. I do. So I bring my own Tupperware to the butcher and I kind of ask them, put it on the scale, zero it, and then pop the meat in. It can be a bit awkward the first time. You might end up having a bit of a strange conversation sometimes, but I think more and more it's becoming common and easier to do. Understanding recycling, as Mum touched on before, when you're kind of like faced with a choice of no perfect packaging, it's always good to pick the one that you know is more likely to be well recycled. So in that case, probably cans or glass. Waste-free shops, I know in Melbourne, and we've got kind of a list later. I know that you guys have organic Whole Foods. You've also got the Source down there. They can be great, particularly for a lot of your pantry staples. You can bring your own container in, take them home, straight in the pantry. It's really great. And then kind of those supermarket wins that we touched on before.
Another interesting issue for supermarkets is we're coming into an era where products are required to have a much better label on them to show their recycled content. So there's a brand called, I think it's Nature's Organics, which is an Australian brand. It recycles its own plastic in Australia, and it remakes its bottles. They're 100% recycled plastic. So they're things like the
Washing up liquid,
Earth's Choice.
Yeah.
If you Google Nature's Organics, they have 4 or 5 brands, and they actually recycle in Australia, and they produce 100% recycled packaging. So if you can't get something that's in paper or an alternative, have a look at the back. I mean, I take a long time in the supermarket because I'm doing this the whole time. But if you can find a package that is 100% recycled plastic, that is creating a demand to suck that plastic out of the environment. Even better if it's done in Australia.
Yeah. And the other thing is, what is in your too hard basket? It will depend on like kind of what your family eats and, what you're willing to do. But I'd say something that's probably quite difficult in regular supermarkets is yogurt. All of it comes in plastic, unless you're going to buy like incredibly expensive yogurt that comes in glass.
Easy.
Well, this is the thing, you can make your own. But for me, I don't care about yogurt that much. I don't eat it that much. So I've just decided to stop eating it to avoid plastic. But you guys make your own.
Yeah, we
because
make our
you
own.
love it.
Yeah.
But I understand that that's not necessarily something that you have time for. And so it just might be something that's in your too hard basket, and you're like, this is just the one plastic thing I get. And that's totally fine. So let's go to the next slide. The bathroom, which I guess is the next, most impactful space.
I'll talk about this.
Yeah.
The bathroom's an interesting one because we put right up the top, what do I really need? Because when we were researching the book, we sort of, I guess we did kind of a self-study, and we had to look through our cupboards and realised the amount of stuff we had that was still left over almost from the 90s.
I have 2 sisters. So between 3 girls and lots of long hair, there were a lot of preening products.
There were a lot of preening products that were never used. So what can I get in solid form? You can get soap, you can get shampoo, you can get conditioner. We've got recipes in the book if you want to make liquid soap from solid soap.
We're actually going to share a recipe at the end of this webinar as well. So if you guys want to take a photo of
it. It's not difficult. Soap nuts are something you may be familiar with. It's from the lychee family, and you put them in a little calico bag and you use them instead of detergent. But a lot of companies are now making detergent available in cardboard boxes. We also go into the book in quite a lot of detail about using essential oils and some of the scientific studies that show what type of products kill germs in the same way as a manufactured chemical product. There's things like tea tree oil and eucalyptus are very, very, very good. Medicines, we say, keep the plastic. The way they're packaged is designed to keep them effective. How will I line my bin? We can do that with newspaper. You can use bio bags as well. The other thing is there's a huge win to be had if you are
yes, if you're someone who gets their period, then having reusable menstrual products, for example, a silicone menstrual cup, or you can also now buy underwear which has menstrual pads built into it, and reusable menstrual pads. They are definitely, I'd say, more expensive at the outlay stage. But I know for me, I have had the same menstrual cup for nearly 5 years now. I think it cost me $50 to buy at the beginning, and I just have never had to buy tampons or pads since then, which is pretty incredible. And when you consider that sanitary products make up a huge amount of landfill, and obviously people who menstruate have to use, kind of $30 to $40 worth of it on average each month, it's a huge cost and it's a huge waste pile up. So that's it's a great easy swap if that's something that you have to deal with every month.
I've just noticed a question on the screen, which is that, you know, what do I do? I can't see an alternative for, say, rice, pasta, milk, things like this. What you can do is push it back onto the manufacturer and onto the supermarket. There's been a huge amount of pressure being put on big manufacturers. Say, the world's biggest consumer goods company is Unilever. They're promising to halve their amount of plastic. So it'd be, you know, I mean, I'm old enough to not worry about being a pest anymore. I just to companies and say, could you, you know, provide an alternative that's in a box? And there is more packaging coming out that is less plasticized. So I guess keep pushing it up the stream, push it back on the manufacturers.
Exactly. And it can just be a question like, you know, do you have an option which is plastic free? Because I love your product and I'd love to buy it without plastic. And you would be honestly surprised at how much of a concern this is for big manufacturers. They are increasingly viewing plastic as actually a threat to their business model.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll keep moving on. So this is, I guess, a bit of a different one. And I know that someone before wrote in, you know, what household products is there hidden plastic in? Like, where would I be surprised to find plastic? And one of them is actually clothes. So increasingly, a lot of clothes are made from synthetic materials like polyester. And unfortunately, what we have discovered is that when we wash these clothes, which are made of a plastic derivative, they shed microplastics into your washing machine and then into your waterways. So there's the equivalent, I think, of about 7 million plastic bags worth of microplastics, which are flushed into Sydney Harbour. It's every day or every week, just by people doing their laundry, which is, you know, something I never thought about when we started this quitting plastic journey. But the good thing is there is actually like 2 quite easy solutions to it. And one is something called a guppy bag, where you can put, you know, you don't want to throw these clothes away. We don't want to create more waste through that. We know that fast fashion is a huge problem, especially if you saw War on Waste. The huge amount of like clothing waste that we create every year is really, really bad, and it's all going to landfill. But if you want to keep your clothes, it also helps preserve them a little bit. You can use a guppy bag, which will catch all those microfibers, and you can kind of scrape them out and just pop them in the bin. This funny kind of like octopus looking thing is called a, do you know what it's called? No. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, guys.
we'll remember what it's called. But basically it has, it works on the same principle, but it kind of creates a type of static within your washing machine, and it attracts all those plastic microfibers again, so that they don't end up in the waterways. And then the other flip side is to make more conscious choices as a consumer, the same way we've talked about, like in your grocery shopping and when you're shopping for the rest of your household, is to, where possible, to pick natural fibers, because we know that, you know, cotton, wool, etc., while they shed microparticles, they will biodegrade. And increasingly, there is a market for kind of new biomaterials. So tencel is made of
eucalyptus. Tencel's a really nice material. It's made from eucalyptus fiber, fast-growing eucalyptus. Even, you know, hemp clothing. There's some beautiful clothing made from fast-growing fibers, bamboo, obviously. But I think, you know, one of the, as Clara said, one of the biggest solutions is buy less fads. Fast fashion was designed for people to wear a garment only 11 times, which seems, you know, like a huge amount of waste. So you're seeing a lot more quality products coming onto the market. And, you know, I mean, I don't really care that much about fashion, I have to say, but if you do, buy classics, because then they'll last a lot longer.
Which I guess goes to like the point we started with, which is it's, you know, it's about kind of waste, what do we say? We don't want to want more and waste more. We want to
waste not want less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And kind of push back against this disposable culture. So just quickly before we go to questions, I know that someone wrote in earlier actually asking about this, like what happens to the biodegradable, you know, so-called green bags that you see in the supermarket. Do they really work?
So this is actually, we do go through this in the book. It's really tricky. You know, you can go into the supermarket and pull off all this stuff that, you know, has got green written all over it and bring it home and realize that degradable and biodegradable, by law, they just have to mean that it breaks down. So you can have something that is biodegradable, but it's actually plastic. So the original biodegradable bags were made from a petroleum-based plastic that just
broke down faster, basically.
Yeah, broke down into microplastics, which is better for not strangling birds, but it's still a microplastic. So compostable, two differences. Can you compost something at home, or do you need a hot industrial composter?
Most compostable coffee cups, if you have, you know, a cafe near you that's trying to be responsible, unfortunately, those are not compostable in your at-home compost. Most of them will need an industrial compost. That said, you know, if they go to landfill, of course, they will still break down like organic material, which is better than, you know, the plastic-lined coffee cups. But it does have, I guess, other environmental implications, and it's not as good, obviously, as if they were going off to an industrial compost.
Again, this is, you know, this is part of the management of our waste. In New Zealand, there are bins on the curb outside coffee shops for those compostable cups, and they go to an industrial composter. But anyway, 100% recycled, that's great, because if it's recycled, I mentioned nature is organics.
It is still plastic though.
Yes. Recyclable versus recycled. I always find it almost amusing that a brand new virgin plastic container says 100% recyclable. Gee, is that the best you can do? But anyway, and so just be careful that you don't get, you know, as a quick glance, when it says recyclable, check that it's actually recycled as opposed to recyclable.
I think before we go to questions generally, this might be a good time to address some of the top questions from Jenny, Dizelle and Kelly about recycling, because it does kind of fall into that greenwashing paradigm. So, you know, how confident can we be that the soft plastics we take to supermarket bins are really constructively recycled?
It's Red.
Yeah, it's that company called Red Cycle. I mean, I feel I have low confidence in that, I have to say. Again, if anyone watched War on Waste and saw Craig Rewcastle kind of put the GPS trackers in his plastic bags, you would see that quite a few times some of those soft plastics definitely just ended up at landfill. That said, Red Cycle is a great company. They take those soft plastics, they melt them down and turn them into furniture, which then you might see in your parks or at your local swimming pool. But it is, I have to say, a space which is lacking in transparency. So definitely keep putting your soft plastics in those bins, but I would also say try and tackle it from, you know, the kind of supply end as well, and try not to have so many of them not to have as many of them, because it's not, unfortunately, a perfect solution. And ultimately, like, you know, that furniture that Red Cycle makes will eventually degrade and it won't be able to be recycled again, because plastic just can't be recycled infinitely. In terms of our home recycling more generally,
So our home recycling, obviously we've got all the different bins, as I mentioned before. You can be, you know, not quite 100%, but getting there, certain that whatever you throw out that's metal will be recycled. It's valuable. It, you know, recycles perfectly. Glass, not so bad, but if you're using a container deposit scheme, that's really increased the recycling rate, which is really a great thing. Paper, the same, about 60%. Plastic, really problematic, because we had been shipping it off to China. That China's now closed to taking our waste plastic, which has led to a huge amount of plastic going to landfill. Another solution, in inverted commas, is what's called waste to energy. Personally, I'm hugely not a fan of this, because plastics are basically made from petroleum. It's not really, it's not a great solution to just burn it to capture energy. It's the same as using a fossil fuel. So again, it goes back to looking at where it goes and trying to avoid the things that don't make it into recycling.
We'll just keep going now. So this is kind of a cause for optimism, the growing global plastic-free movement. And that's really, you know, all of you here today. There are 145 people at this webinar, which is absolutely incredible. I'm sure the actual number of people attending is bigger because I know a lot of you might be there with your partners or other people from your household watching together. And as we said before, there's been this amazing cottage industry, which has come out of people wanting to be plastic free, of like a lot of ordinary people being very innovative and creating these products which go around these plastic norms that we have kind of fallen into as a society. And I think it's great for a number of reasons. One, it's, you know, a whole lot of small businesses that you can support, often in your local community. And I guess more than that, it really shows us how much we don't need and how just one thing can replace a huge amount of other waste. And then I think finally, it's been really nice for us at least, and you know, you might find this when you come out of lockdown and you start implementing some of the tips from this webinar and in the book, but we've found we really connected a lot with our local community through going plastic free. We started a lot of really interesting conversations. Our local coffee store, you were the first person to bring a cup there, which can definitely be a bit
That's a long time ago.
long time ago, which can be, you know, a bit intimidating. But through, you know, ongoing conversations that Keep Cups started with the baristas there, they now, you know, have decided that's something they want to wholly embrace. They have, you know, Keep Cups branded in the name of their cafe, and they offer a discount for people who are choosing to do that, which is awesome. So just, I think we might skip past this so we can get to more questions. But this is just about bioplastics and kind of some of the alternatives that are emerging in this space, which are definitely fantastic in that they don't hang around as much as plastic, but they come with their own problems in terms of pressure on resources and how we're actually going to deal with all this waste.
Yeah, I guess the thing with bioplastics is it's not a cultural change. It's you just continue to waste stuff. It's just that it's made from corn. So it might be that you're, you know, cutting down the Brazilian forest to grow more corn to make more waste. So it doesn't really make that much difference.
But it is definitely a good alternative, I'd say, for places where you can't have reusable. So for example, I mean,
on planes,
on
it's a great
planes,
idea.
exactly,
Because they're lightweight.
and then they'll go straight into their own industrial compost,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. So this is something we've spoken about. Just quickly.
So we've got some, you know, national packaging targets. Australia's full of targets. Unfortunately, it would be nice if it was actually, you know, legislated in some way. We hope to do this. So there's a lot of, if you have a look at the screen, there's some brands up there that I mentioned before. All the main companies have signed up for this. So if you are writing to businesses and asking them about packaging, go and have a look at the National Packaging Targets line. It's easy to do. And that's what people have signed up for. So just, you know, you say, this is great. Can you tell me what you're doing? Could you, you know, provide this this product in a different form? And I see there's a question about composite packaging, which is paper with a plastic lining. The paper with a bioplastic lining that's compostable can solve that product. So there are a few interesting things happening with some of the big manufacturers that are looking at ways of taking the plastic out of some of those products. So just keep pushing them.
Oops, sorry, my mouse has disappeared. So yeah, we'll just keep going. So this is just some useful shops. Ours, we have, you know, obviously we have more knowledge of New South Wales because that's where we live and where we've kind of had our plastic-free journey. But having a bit of a Google
That's a good one. Yeah.
Around Melbourne, I know, as you know, you guys do still have the Source. You've got Organic Whole Foods. There are a couple that you can shop online and they will actually send everything to you in plastic-free packaging. Not so much food stuff, but, you know, other things that you might need.
Like Shop Naturally and Flora and Fauna.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing is there's a great app which is called Zero Waste Home, which will find waste-free or bulk stores near you anywhere in the world. So I know we're not all going to be traveling anytime soon. But that's a great one if you want to find the waste-free stores which are local to you. I also know that if you just actually Google plastic-free stores Melbourne, there is a great blog post by the Rogue Ginger, which has a big list of them and kind of the different things that they supply. So, okay, let's So this is just kind of a good news story, but we might skip this in order to just answer a few more questions. Okay, we'll come back to it at the end. So with the questions now, there's a lot of them. I think we have answered some, but we're just going to try and get through quite a few. And we'll stay on for like another 15, 20 minutes to try and answer some of these. But if you need to go, that's completely fine. So
should we do the wrap up, then go back to the questions with the raffle?
Oh, yes, sure. So before we start answering your questions, there's just some ways to keep in touch with us. If you want to buy our book, it is available online at a whole lot of different online retailers. And we did actually also send the Yarra Ranges Council 3 books to be raffled off. So Sarah has just kind of put all your names into a random raffle generator. And so congratulations. To our raffle winners, your names are there on the screen. We really hope that you enjoy the book. And what's going to happen is that they will be posted to you. I think Sarah or someone else from the council will be in touch with you to find out the best way to get those books to you. And hopefully they'll be with you soon. So I'm just going to pop this up on the screen while we answer some questions. There's some DIY recipes if you want to try them or take a screenshot so that you can, experiment with some plastic-free recipes. Okay, so I think we've answered Sally's question about food coming in packaging. Okay, so Kelly, about cleaning things for recycling. It's a big issue.
Yeah, look, obviously no one wants to put a whole lot of food waste stuck to their cans and bottles out, but it is cleaned again when it gets to the recycling plant. So it doesn't have to be dishwasher clean. If you want to save water, as this is about, you just fill a jar or can up, with a little bit of water, shake it, and that's okay.
And use that across several things?
Yes, yeah, that's okay. Yep.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So Gay has asked us, do we have any suggestions for takeaway in the COVID world? So as we noted that, there's definitely a reluctance in Sydney as well for keep cups and a desire to I have seen, croissants, which used to just be, in a big box and then they put it in a paper bag for you. I'm seeing them individually wrapped now. It is really difficult, I have to say, and I know it's more difficult in Melbourne because you guys only have takeaway as an option, really. What I try and do when I know that I'm getting something delivered to my house is to opt for a form of takeaway, which I know can come in paper packaging. I live in the inner city in Sydney, so I'm very, very spoiled for choice, which I know is a different situation to most people. So if I'm kind of thinking I don't want to cook dinner or I haven't had time to cook dinner tonight, I'll try and order from places like a burger place, for example, where I know that it comes in a cardboard box. And there are a few little places around me, like pizza, for example, as well, that I know is going to come in a cardboard box rather than in plastic packaging. When lockdown does finish, I'd say the other good thing is to just go to your local Thai or Vietnamese or, whatever your favorite local is with your own containers. That's something I do quite a lot. Sometimes I'll bring glass Tupperware. Sometimes I'll bring kind of old plastic containers that I've had from times when I haven't been able to avoid it. And then they can put your food just straight into those containers rather than giving you new ones, which is, but again, it'll differ depending on your, what cafe or what restaurant it is during COVID times. I have really used lockdown to learn how to cook a lot more, I have to say, which has been really good for keeping me occupied. But I know that not everyone might want to do that, but there are some options there if you want to try them.
What did Cat want?
Yes, sure.
The cat litter for Leanne, one of the not so pleasant. Oh, it's gone off the screen.
No,
yeah. Alternatives to bin liners and used cat litter disposal. I've got cats, they're locked up at night, and I use newspaper underneath the litter. And I actually use bioplastic bags, which are from BioBag in South Australia. We were very fortunate because the company, once it started up, they were the first one to start up in Australia. kindly sent me some, and I thought they were so good I continue to use them. So that is, I think, you know, they're very flimsy because they're compostable, but they do the trick for if you are not able to compost them yourselves, that have to go into the waste stream. So I think that's a solution. You can sometimes use a big paper bag as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like thick paper. So we'll answer, sorry, my mouse keeps disappearing. We'll ask Lean's question next, which is about kind of, you know, so-called paper bags and cups which have a coating, and, you know, kind of how to deal with a lot of that. It can be, I think, as we said before, I guess you can try a number of different things. One is kind of, you know, if you're feeling up to it, emailing the manufacturer, telling them, I actually feel disappointed that this is what you're doing because it could be such, you know, such more eco-friendly packaging, and do you have any, you know, solutions in the pipeline about, you know, it being lined with bioplastic instead, for example. Alternative.
I was going to say that the rest mentioned meat. One of the things we did, I'm a vegetarian, but my kids weren't, so we were still buying meat. And we established very early on a relationship with our local butcher, and I took glass containers with a clip-on plastic lid. And they have, even through COVID, were happy to take them. They've been in the dishwasher. So a lot of it's about starting a conversation, and I understand that you may not be able to do this during your particular level of lockdown. People may not take your containers. Restaurants as well, we particularly have a local Indian restaurant. You've probably seen the tiffin boxes that Indians use, which are metal, clip, 3 different layers. That's what I do there. Your kids' favourite cereal, I'm afraid I can't answer that because
it might just be one of those things that you decide as a family
is
something too hard,
and
you know,
you put that in the soft plastics. But I'm a bit of a dragon, and I forced everybody to have oats because I could get that in bulk,
and as a result I just don't eat cereal anymore.
Yeah, so
it was so disgusting.
They had to have porridge every single day, so yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So Nicole asking, what can we use as bin liners? We did touch on that before. There is a company called BioBag, or alternatively there are bags, plastic bags, which are made from cornstarch, which are, you just want to make sure that they are 100% compostable, whatever you use as a plastic alternative. Alternatively, people have had success lining their bins with newspaper. I'd say for most people that probably only works with a small bin, like for example, your bathroom bin. Otherwise, yes, using the cornstarch plastic is a good one for that. So Mikoto has a question about, you know, those coffee bags, which are also aluminium lined. It is a really tricky one.
I guess this goes back to the other answer for a lot of these things is, can you do it another way? Can you maybe get a coffee grinder, or
I think the beans still come in.
Yeah. Aluminium. Is there a bulk way to get beans?
I think you can buy bulk coffee beans, and look, it really depends on how much of a coffee addict you are. I am definitely a huge coffee addict. But I think something which has been good during lockdown is I have been buying coffee in a bag. It is aluminium lined, which I know is not ideal, but I buy like a really huge bag of it so that I know that I am only buying it once every kind of like 2 or 3 months. And I have to say, maybe I just don't have that discerning of palate. I'm sure that there's probably something where it doesn't taste that good after a while, but I don't really notice. And I've been making my coffee on a little stovetop cafetiere, and that's been really nice. I've also been drinking way too much coffee as a result of that. That's a good question from Katerina about the financial implications. So asking, you know, this is a difficult time for everyone financially. Yes, and how these products are quite expensive. Are there any tips for going plastic free without breaking the bank?
Yeah. Well, I think the first place to start is in your supermarket. So I think you're completely right. So if you go into a sort of bulk food store and you buy a small amount of organic flour or something like that, it's going to be way more expensive than a big, you know, general flour that's available in a supermarket. So see what you can find in your supermarket. In the book, we've got quite a few tips. I like to think that I can make a cake with no plastic because I can get eggs, butter, flour, sugar, the basics without plastic.
At Coles or Woolies without plastic.
Yeah, you can get pasta in a cardboard box. So there are quite a lot of, you can get washing detergent in a cardboard box. There's quite a lot of things that you can actually do with no change in pricing. And then I guess what we do, which is all very well for me to say because my kids are grown up, we cook a lot from scratch, which saves a huge amount of packaging. So instead of
money.
Yeah, and money. So instead of buying sort of sauces and all of that sort of thing, we go to our local Harris farm and buy second picks and make a lot of stuff from scratch. So a lot of meals won't actually have any packaging at all.
I guess the other thing is I would say is like when you first, I feel like, enter into this plastic free thing, it seems like you are meant to buy all this stuff. You know, you're meant to buy the beeswax wraps, you're meant to buy the Keep Cup, you're meant to buy...
Make beeswax wraps. Well, cheap, yeah.
Yeah, but firstly, like, you don't need to buy those things at all. Like, you can put a plate over, you know, kind of a bowl of food in your fridge. You don't need to accumulate new things to go plastic free. It is fantastic that there are all these innovative solutions to replace things like Glad wrap that we've gotten really used to and Ziploc plastic bags. But often you'll find that you actually have a lot of the stuff which works as a replacement, perhaps not exactly the same, but by and large in your own house. So you'll probably have Tupperware containers. Please stop moving. You're distracting me. So yeah, don't feel like you have to go and buy a metal straw, buy beeswax wraps, buy all that stuff. Like, you can just use the stuff that you have in your house. And then hopefully, you know, also going on your local buy, swap, sell pages. If you want, you know, a whole lot of glass jars to use as Tupperware, there are often like great things in your community where you can swap all of that. Again, probably not during lockdown, but hopefully when Melbourne comes out of it in a few weeks, you guys can kind of do a bit of a resource share as well. So Alice has mentioned that there's a great store called the Unwrapped Pantry in Belgrade that has spices. So that's a great local solution for everyone if you want to try that. Mark has also mentioned that there's a Four Corners on Monday focusing on plastic recycling. So that might be interesting for some of you. So
there was a suggestion of Tupperware container for used mask, which is a good idea as well. Yep, that's a good idea. Mesh bags.
So Gwen has asked about how to deal with cornstarch plastics like a toothbrush if you only have a home composting bin. And can it go in the council green bin?
That would depend on your council. We can't, I mean, and obviously this is, you know,
Sarah can probably
answer that. Councils are actually pretty good at telling you what they can take, but that sounds like a really good idea.
And similarly, I guess related to that, Jean has asked, what can I use as an alternative to toothpaste? That's a really good question because it is a difficult one. What you can use increasingly are toothpaste chews. They're kind of like little tablets that you crunch up in your mouth and then brush your teeth with. I know there's a number of different kind of small businesses that manufacture them, and they'll come often in a tin rather than in plastic. I'd say a drawback of that is a lot of the ones that you can get don't have fluoride in them, so it might not be an option for you. For example, if you still have young kids at home who really need that extra protection for their teeth, but that is an option. Personally, I really don't like them. I find it very off-putting to brush my teeth like that. So I have to say toothpaste is one of those things that it's in my too hard basket. I just want to use the regular toothpaste. So, you know, it is a personal choice always. So I'm just trying to, got that one there.
Do you want to go back to the other screen to walk just so
Oh, sorry. We'll just put this, back here. Hopefully everyone's had time to get the recipes. And here, just leave this up here in case you want to connect with us later. How do we find shampoo bars? That's a great question, Catherine. You can find them on some of the shops we listed before, Shop Naturally, Flora and Fauna. There's also an amazing woman who we met through writing the book down in Tasmania. She has a business called Beauty and the Bees, and she makes her own shampoo and conditioner bars, and her whole business has been plastic free for 25 years. So she's an amazing, amazing person.
And going back to the thing about cost, it might look expensive to buy a shampoo bar. I think they're about $12, the Tasmanian ones, and the conditioner's more. I think it was $14. But they last for a really long time because remember they're concentrated, so they last for ages. Somebody else has put up Ethique. That's a fantastic New Zealand product. Their shampoo and conditioner bars, again, I think they're absolutely fantastic, and it's such an easy win. Also means your bathroom's less cluttered up with all those bottles. So yeah.
Cam's asked about pet owners, tips or suggestions for plastic-free dog food, products, chew toys, poo bags. So poo bags, again, you can use the bio bags. They actually produce like specifically ones for dog poo.
Yeah, so if they're dropped in the environment, they will break down and they won't kill animals and contaminate the soil.
With actual pet food, I have to say that is one of the very, very tricky ones. When we were researching the book, I came across this blog of someone who was like really, really committed to being plastic free. And so what she did was actually buy from her vet, because often you can switch to, I guess, you can't actually just switch to just feeding your pets, like, I guess, mince from the butcher, because there is a lot of vitamins and minerals which is in pet food, which is really, really important for their health. So what this person had done was they had gone to their vet, had bought almost like powdered multivitamins, and then what she did was she mixed it in with a whole lot of mince, and then that's what she fed her cats. Again, like for me personally, I don't think I would do that. It seems really full on, but perhaps an alternative might be that you feed your dog the dog biscuits, which have all those minerals and vitamins in them, but then you might feed them not as much canned dog food and maybe sometimes buy them some cheap chicken wings or something to crunch on instead, as a way of reducing the plastic stream through that. But it is, I have to say, it's a tricky one with pets for sure.
Yeah, it depends how much time you've got. Our neighbours actually dries out egg shells, grinds them down and mixes them with mince to calcify the meat, which is, that's pretty cool. But you've got to be retired to do that.
So Gwyn has also asked about rubber not necessarily being biodegradable. Do you want to talk about that? I thought it was.
I'm not 100% sure. It depends if you can get pure latex gloves, but you can get it's what's happened with tires and all sorts of things like that, is they've got additives, so they're not necessarily biodegradable. I would have to put that as a question to go away and research more, I'm afraid.
So mesh bags, again, some of the shops that we mentioned before, online, Flora and Fauna. Yep. There's a brand called Onya, O-N-Y-A, and they do a lot of the mesh bags that you can buy, and they are great.
And some people make them out of curtains, out of old mesh curtains, or
they don't have to be mesh either. Like, if you have any kind of clothes that you don't wear anymore and you're handy with a needle and thread, you can always just make them into a sewing machine. I mean, that's what I did. For my garden, I made mesh bags when I wanted to protect the tomatoes and things from bugs, and I kind of just had a drawstring and a mesh bag, and that wasn't too hard. So any advice on composting? You do a lot more than I do.
Yeah, look, I'm involved with a community garden that had a community level drop-off compost. So we thought that it was too hard for a lot of people to start composting on their own. So what we did was set up a community scale one where people can drop off their composting and we run it. But composting is, if you have the space, it's really not hard. It's magic, actually, because basically the bugs do all the work for you and you end up with some great soil. That may be something that's also worth asking your council, because increasingly councils are allowing you to put food waste into the green bin and they are doing the composting for you.
Or if you've got, a community garden around you who might be willing to do a similar scheme, that's a great idea.
A lot of community gardens will take your compost. You just need to bring it up in a container, but contact them first.
But for me, so I live in a small apartment in the inner city of Sydney. I don't have a compost bin, but I do have a worm farm, and that has been really great for my household in terms of reducing our organic waste, because I don't need the same space that a compost would require, and the worms kind of chow through it all. I have to say they're a bit slow at the moment because it's been cold, so I haven't been feeding them as much, but that can be an option if you've got a balcony or like a well ventilated area and you're living in a smaller space. So I think it's coming up to 11:15 now, so we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, coreable, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, the fabric,
the weird thing that catches microfibers is called a coreable.
But yes, so we might wrap up there since we have already run kind of 15 minutes over our original allotted time. But if you do have any other questions, do get in touch. We are at the Quitting Plastic Guide on Instagram, quittingplasticbook@gmail.com. I'd say the vast majority of, have we got a yogurt recipe? There is some instructions in the book. Maybe?
I can't remember if there is.
We've got a few recipes in the book. So, and yes, I'd say, so the book does have all of the stuff we've talked about and then much more in a lot more detail. So
it's even got how to make your own crackers, which I think is one of the most difficult ones. So when you can really impress your friends when they're allowed to come over, is you've got fresh crackers out of the oven instead of buying them in
for your cheese. Yeah,
for your cheese. Yeah,
for your cheese board.
I don't know if you've made your own cheese as well, but
I mean, but they're great because they're also, it's only a three ingredient recipe. So and they are a hit, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
But yes, so Sarah, is there anything else that we wanted to say before we sign off?
Just thank you so much for that. That has been so, just so much information, and
hopefully in a good way.
Yeah. Just, it's kind of really inspirational, actually, what you guys have done. And I have actually read the book, and the book is really easy to read. It's really easy to kind of follow, and it does have some amazing recipes. So yes, thank you for that. I have just put in the chat function just our email, just if anyone's got any council related questions, they can just send me an email. So that'd be great. I think we've also got a few more questions, but what we might do is you can send them to me and then I can forward them on. But before everyone goes, I just wanted to quickly do a couple more questions just to see, if you've learnt anything, if that's okay. It won't be very long.
Hopefully you have.
So there's just this one. Just quickly answer that one for me. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah, this is a bit like marking us, so get a bit nervous.
No, definitely not. No,
it's a joke. It's fine. It's all good.
Okay. Well, I might just give people just another 5 seconds. All right, thank you. I'll just share the results.
Oh, great.
There you go. So 49% have increased their knowledge slightly, and then 45% have really learnt a lot from this webinar.
Oh,
that's great. That's good. And 6% didn't learn anything. Oh dear. Or maybe they were the experts.
Yeah, I assume that was our recycling expert who probably knows a lot of this already.
Yeah, and there's just one more too, just because you've got really some fantastic tips.
Yeah, we hope that everyone has found some changes that they want to make.
Even if it's just eating ice cream cones when they let you out of lockdown instead of the cup with this plastic spoon.
Yeah, it's a really good tip. Yeah. Just what you were saying before, just about even if you take away just 1 or 2 little tips, it makes a really huge difference. So
completely. I think it's that quote that people share a lot on Instagram and on Facebook is, to change the world, we actually need a whole lot of people doing things imperfectly rather than a very small number doing things perfectly. As we've kind of mentioned, we're not 100% plastic free. We do as much as we can, and we've definitely come a long way, but wherever you start, it's always good, even small changes you can make.
There you go. So 37% going to make some small changes, and 47% are going to make quite a few changes. And then 14% are going to completely change the way that they...
Oh, fantastic. Hey, thank you. And I'm hoping that the 3% that aren't going to make any changes, they're already doing so much of this stuff. And thank you for coming anyway. It's great. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. You know, it obviously our purpose is to try and multiply this behaviour, so all of you can try and multiply this behaviour as well. And yeah, it will make a difference.
Yes, and thank you so much for all your interesting questions. It's incredible the number of people that have come along on this Saturday morning to hear us talk about quitting plastic, and hopefully, you know, we've answered some of them. And yes, Sarah, if you pass them on, we can try and do our best to get some more answers to you. But if you can't wait, you can order the book online. It's also available as an ebook on Kindle.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So if you want it instantly. And yes, it's been really, really wonderful chatting to you all. We hope that you're all, you know, holding up as best as you can in lockdown in Melbourne, and we are really feeling for you. And hope that Melbourne's going to come out of it soon, and that you guys will soon be able to all gather and share your ideas and share some of your plastic-free tips together at your local bulk food store. So thank you very much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Yep. See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.